Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Wisp Radio's Ruck On, the Rugby Show. I'm Maria Sampson, Rugby World Cup silver medalist from 2014, recording today out of Fort McMurray, Alberta. Every month, I'll be bringing you the latest news and views from women's international rugby in the lead up to the 2017 Rugby World Cup. On this episode, I'll be covering the draw for the Women's Rugby World Cup, the qualification that's still to take place, and the flurry of November internationals that we had last month. The Women's Rugby World Cup draw took place on November 9th at Belfast City Hall in Ireland. It started with a song that gave me goosebumps, The World in Union. It was sung by Sarah Richmond, and she was backed up by the Peace Proms Choral Ensemble. The Women's Rugby World Cup draw featured 12 teams, and the draw for those 12 teams occurred by splitting them into 4 different bands, and then you picked one team from each band, and that created 3 pools. As a reminder, the teams that qualified thus far for the 2017 World Cup are England, Canada, France, Ireland, New Zealand, the USA, and Australia. Those are the top 7 teams from 2014. Italy and Wales have qualified as the next best place finishers from Six Nations 2016, and Spain just recently qualified in a 2-game playoff against Scotland, beating them 10-5 on both occasions. The last 2 remaining spots go to Asia and Oceania, winner and runner-up from the tournament that's going to be taking place later in December. On the day of the draw, there was lots of anticipation, with the top 3 teams being split into separate bands. So you could get a top 3 matchup in one of the pools if New Zealand ended up being in the same pool as either England or Canada. And that's exactly what happened. The pools ended up falling out as follows. Canada, New Zealand, Wales, and the Asia-Oceania runner-up are Pool A. Pool B consists of 2014 Rugby World Cup winners England, USA, Italy, and Spain. And Pool C rounds out with France, Ireland, Australia, and Asia-Oceania winners. The Asia-Oceania tournament, the Repechage tournament, is going to be taking place on December 9th, 13th, and 17th. And essentially, it's a round robin between Fiji, Hong Kong, and Japan. Now, neither Fiji or Hong Kong have attended a World Cup to date. Therefore, one of them will definitely be going to the World Cup. I have a feeling that Hong Kong is going to be doing very well in that Repechage tournament with Anna Richards involved in their program. Going back to the pools, one of the things that's probably a little bit nerve-wracking, I think, is to have Canada and New Zealand, as I mentioned, in the same pool. But as François Ratier, the coach of the Canadian women, said, you have to beat the best to be the best. So I think that team is excited for their pool. Looking at Pool B, England, USA, Italy, and Spain, I think England will have a relatively easy way to go on to the semifinals. But USA is always a very, very physical team, and so they can really put a lot of pressure on England at the breakdown in tackles and during scrum set piece. One pool that I'm really interested to see who gets out of is actually Pool C. France, Ireland, and Australia are all very strong teams, and then they're going to get the winner of the Repechage tournament. I think that pool will definitely come down to bonus points and points for and against in terms of which team goes on to the semifinal from that pool. The November internationals. So exciting. So we had a total of 9 top 7 games throughout November. And, it's hard to predict from those internationals what is going to happen at the World Cup, except that we know that there's going to be a huge factor when it comes to depth. England had 4 games over November, beating France 10-5, beating Ireland 12-10, taking on New Zealand and unfortunately losing 25-20, and then beating Canada 39-6 in a 7-try affair. One thing that England showed is that they do have a large amount of depth. They only had 5 positions over their 4 games that remained unchanged. So they were able to use a certain amount of depth throughout all their games and try out different combinations. Ireland, as I already mentioned, played England. They also lost to Canada 48-7, and then also played New Zealand, losing 38-8. Ireland only kept 3 players unchanged in those 3 games, and so like England, they were trying out a lot of various combinations. France played England, and then they also played a 2-game series against the United States, beating them by a relative score of 36-10 and 31-6. France had at least 2 different starters in every single position over their 3 games. That means they never started the same player twice. They never started the same player for all 3 games throughout those games in November. France always has a lot of depth. They have a lot of size, and I think that's one thing that's going to be very important to their World Cup campaign. Moving on now to Canada. Canada played Ireland, New Zealand, as well as England. They beat Ireland very handedly. They played the game that Canada loves to play: fast, quick, scoring, long runs, and being very physical at the breakdown. Unfortunately for them, they played New Zealand with a very quick turnaround, ended up losing 20-10. And I think fresh Canada would have a very good shot at beating New Zealand on a given day. They went on with only 2 days off, a travel day and a captain's run day, to go play England, losing 39-6 in that 7-try romp by England that I mentioned earlier. One thing that's really interesting that Canada did is they played almost an identical squad for all 3 games. Now, in 2013, when Canada went to France and England, they had 26 girls on tour, and at least one of them started one of the games. In this tour, the Canadian coaches decided to play almost identical squads throughout the 3 games, which really put a lot of pressure with such a short turnaround, 3 games in 8 days. So it's interesting to see if they want to try to solidify that starting combination, or if we do truly have a lack of depth from 15 players onwards. For New Zealand going on, they had 3 games while only making 5 changes. So again, they probably have a solid squad. And what's interesting with New Zealand, they went 3-0 on their November campaign, beating England, beating ourselves Canada, and then beating Ireland as well. Now, they had some 7s girls in their program, which then went on to play in Dubai. And so that was pretty interesting to be able to show the support between both codes. And it obviously paid off, them being 3-0 in the November campaign, keeping their World Cup ranking as number 1, and then going on to Dubai and winning that tournament. I think good things are always to come in New Zealand, and they've definitely proven themselves over November and the early part of December. Lastly, USA went to play France, losing both games, but they only made 3 changes throughout their 2 games. I think the USA is starting to build up their 15s program. They've put a lot of contracted players in the USA, and so there will be big things to come. And like I said earlier, they're always a really hard-hitting team. One thing that we covered last month was about 7s players crossing over to 15s. And as I mentioned, New Zealand advocated that essentially they had Portia Woodman as one standout player who ended up playing 2 codes. USA also had a couple players playing both codes as well that could go on and to play in Dubai. And so I think, this idea of being able to play both codes and being successful is something that can happen as long as you manage the players' welfare. I think it's so important that 15s maintains its place. 15s is rugby is really a game for everybody, and it's accepting of all shapes and sizes. So I think it's important to keep 15s on the forefront, not only focus on 7s, and allow players who want to go back and forth to have that opportunity. That's all for this month's Ruck On. I'll be back early in the new year, 2017. Can't believe it's 2017 already, with more on women's international rugby. In the meanwhile, be sure to check out the global women's sports coverage on our website at wisports.com, where you can also read or listen to the blogcast of a history of rugby. You can join us too on social media at wisports, and I'm on Twitter at MariaSamson5. We'd love to hear what you think, or if you have any questions, you can drop us a line at info@wisports.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.